Thank you for hanging out at Framework. Please ignore my Madonna mic. It's just what's happening, but it's fine. There's a session going on in A at the moment, and now today we're going to start our sort of split sessions like Laura was saying. So there'll be some in here, there'll be some in there. If you need to go to the restrooms, they're down through that hallway where the exit signs are, and also from this point on, we won't access A through those doors, we'll access it through that back hallway. So just a little housekeeping. Coming up next, we have a speaker who is Charlie Davis from Luke Hall's studio, and she's going to give her presentation, so please listen, and at the end we'll have some Q&A. So everyone give it up for Charlie.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm Charlie. I'm a video designer at Luke Hall Studio. I'm basically here just to talk about my experiences, really, of our role as a video designer within live performance, specifically reflecting on the different applications of our art form and how they vary and influence each other, I think, quite a lot in my experience. Before I get into Luke Hall Studio and all of it, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me first, just to share a little bit on my background. I began my career, I didn't go to university. I don't know if there's lots of people like that here, but I started just running, gunning, interning at East London production houses, interning to on-set work, camera assisting, and then eventually I found post-production. I tried a bit of that. I then moved into fashion film and photography. This is all stumbling. I assisted incredible directors and filmmakers. I created title cards. I was people's AD. I made behind-the-scenes videos, anything I could, and every single part of the process I fell more in love with. Whether it was the beginning, the end, the middle, the bit that didn't matter to someone else, I found all of it coming together incredibly exciting. So I started producing, still editing, still trying things out, but I loved production because suddenly I realized because I think, personally, production is an incredibly creative role within the video design community. I think you hugely advise and help the creative development process as a producer. So I have huge love for that role. And then, obviously, I kept going back and forth. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And suddenly, my fashion work found itself dribbling into live. Whether it was a tiny installation, for a dance film, or suddenly the Hugo Boss wanting to turn that ad we made for them into an actual LED billboard in their store. And I realized, oh my God, there's this whole other world that I'm unaware of and has another layer, light, scale, all this exciting stuff. The project that really sold it for me, this is Ron Arad's Curtain Calls. It's I think it's actually annual installation at the Roundhouse in London. And it's essentially, it's a cylindrical installation made of like silicone rods that takes projection really beautifully. The outside is just as good as the inside. I totally fell into this project. I didn't mean to get into it. I was looking, but I didn't, know anything about projection, to be honest, at that point. And I absolutely loved the challenge of it. And then, stumbling, and then I found Luke Hall's. And if you don't know Luke's work, he's an incredibly, he's an admired film designer, video designer within our field, lots of theatre and opera, and together we made the studio bigger and became Luke Hall's studio instead of just Luke Hall's. So we're a video design studio working within live performance. We're founded and creatively directed by Luke. We're based in London, but now Los Angeles, hence my being here. And we're fortunate enough, because of Luke's breadth of work and his background, to have the opportunity to work on an incredible range of projects that I think really inform each other. And there is a specific reason why we're still Luke Hall Studio, because actually I think, and Luke thinks, that the theatrical and operatic mediums they do like a single vision. It is a film director, it is a theatre designer, it is a specific role. So although there's lots of people at Luke Hall Studio, we call ourselves Luke Hall Studio for a very specific reason. You are treated a little bit differently within theatre, maybe, than within our practices. And that studio helps you with what I call the more commercial projects, where you need to expand, that everyone wants to trust that you can handle this huge show. So I think it's a nice balance that we've attained, and we don't mind all hiding up behind Luke's name. We're totally fine with it. I'm going to go through a few projects of our own. The focus of my talk is about, I think our work is so cross-disciplinary in so many different aspects. So I'm going to start just by showing a few of the works that we've made that are so different. We create visuals, all of us do, as video designers, for pop shows. This is Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia Tour, where we dove into 80s and 90s pop culture references, workout videos, very 80s inspired. And then we do small-scale theatre productions, the contemporary theatre, new writing. This is Girls and Boys, which was at the Royal Court Theatre. It's written by Dennis Kelly, completely brand new script, not one we've already heard before. And it was directed by Lindsay Turner, and the stage was designed by Ez Devlin. The story is of a woman who loses her children tragically. It's a monologue, it's a one-person show, and it's her telling her story. The set is obviously cold blue, devoid of materiality or any other colour, kind of representing her, her loss. The concept for projection was that we would bring back the life and the colour in her memories, as she described them, when her children were alive. And I'm sure everyone is aware in the room how annoying it is to make something like this and how long it takes, because it was painstaking. But what a wonderful effect, because I overheard viewers in the audience after the show saying, "Oh, that was really smart. They must have just projected it blue." And I thought, well, that's brilliant. They didn't see the tech, feel the tech, know where the tech was coming from. It just appeared and disappeared, which was super exciting. But I have to admit, despite all that hard work that went into it, it was only 25 seconds of projection in that show. So it felt like quite a lot of tech for quite a little amount of time. But it was incredibly poignant, and it did seem to really stay with people. So there you go, 25 seconds or not, it seemed to do its job. Then we can move into larger scale theatrical and operatic experiences. This is Meredith Monk's Atlas, which only had like 3 or 4 shows at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, which is crazy because of the size of that set. It was directed by Yuval Sharon, and the set design was Ez Devlin as well. I don't know if anyone knows Meredith Monk's work, but this specific piece, Atlas, it doesn't actually have any language or words. It's all sounds. It's completely made up. So projection plays an incredible role in setting the scene, helping the audience to understand the story, which is the goal for everything we've seen so far. This is another larger scale show, but this is actually a one-off event. So we've done all of these different types of projects, and then, oh yes, there's one-off of huge events that people create bespoke that don't fall into a category or a genre. This is the UAE's 49th National Day show, where they celebrate the joining of the 7 Emirates. And in that, they celebrate, it's a newly directed and written piece celebrating modern culture, their modern culture, apologies, whilst honouring the country's past and their founders. And the content here, it's storytelling, but it's emotive. It's trying to feel that emotion of that moment. It's not telling you where they are or what they're doing or anything like that. It's not narrative in that manner, but it's still contributing towards the story. It's also incredibly tied to the set in that all the content was derived from the apertures and the physical holes and cut-ins in the set. And then we go small again, exhibitions. This is Epic Iran at the V&A Museum in London, where we projection mapped relics so that they can look like they did when they were originally, new. And we hired drones and we shot all of the beautiful landscapes of Iran to show people its colourful side, as it may not be received that way. And then we go all the way back to fashion now. So we've just been in Iran and now looking at art and relics, and now we're looking at fashion, but there's similarities. We're going back to sculpture, art. This is the Bottega Veneta show, I think it was 2019, where we changed we designed it from top to bottom, but essentially we wanted to transport all the audience into a palazzo of sculpture and stone. I'm just going to take a minute. I've just collated a few bits of all those shows. And I know it's an obvious thing, but I think we need to say and take a moment to reflect on the interdisciplinary nature of this work and all of our work, because it's not just Luke Hall Studio that's doing all this different types of work. With everyone within our industry in video design is character animating, directing shoots and editing them, interior designing, apparently in some instances, directing live cameras on set, creating live effects. Already, comparatively to any more traditional film workflow, we're doing everything. And that's only within one industry, because we all know you can do a pop show, you can design a show, and you can use all of those mediums within it. it doesn't need to necessarily need to be different categories of the genre that defines this workflow. We have so many tools, and we need so many tools to be able to tell these stories. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our team and how we're able to do the big shows, the small shows. We're actually a really small team of 9 people. The full-timers are what we call the core roles of the team. So we're 3D, 2D designers, producers, animators, and technical directors. Every single person in our team has a different background. Luke taught us all the fundamentals of his craft that he's developed over the years, but he didn't look for all those skills in us. He found something else that was interesting and then brought us all together like a big hodgepodge, all to help each other learn about all those different skills that we spoke about. So, you know, how we treat our studio, it is very small, as one designer will lead and one producer will lead a project. But those 2 people don't then just run off with freelancers and just make that project. We all sit down and talk about it with each other, even if you're not involved in that project, because I want to consult Mark, who's on our team's advice, because he's got loads of experience in motion graphics for brands, and my, you know, client really wants to try and make it feel that way, or whatever the case may be. But everyone's advice is key, and we do everything as a studio as much as humanly possible. The benefits of having a small studio is you get to do loads of fun stuff. So, you know, we stay nimble. We can hugely expand and get small again, depending on the climate, the industry, COVID, which is a huge advantage, I think. And I think there's a huge amount of benefits, by the way, to having a bigger studio, but these are the benefits of our smaller one. So when we want to do a beautiful project, but it doesn't have a huge amount of money, we don't have a huge amount of people that would need to pay bills and need to do things, and we can sit and we can spend a while shooting ourselves and having a nice time. We also have dedicated team in-house, technical team in-house. So our technical director, Zach Hain, has incredible knowledge in projection hardware, software. We all use Disguise. We all use whatever's coming out. We'll try it, Mapping Matter. But Zach really leads that. He understands materials incredibly well, and so we have a huge amount of confidence in our decision-making process because we test and we try and we enjoy it, and we don't have to source that expertise out of our studio. Then, obviously, if you want to do a big project, a huge pop show, you have to get big. So then we hire loads of incredible freelancers, permalancers much of the time, because most of these people we've been working with for 6 years minimum. And we get big nice and quickly, and it puts us in a unique position to be able to balance our workload, because it allows us to do smaller scale projects with 1 or 2 of us, and then another producer and a creative director can run off, get 12 animators together and try and do a big show at the same time, which I think is really exciting. I'm going to talk a little bit about the workflow. I'm sure lots of you already know this workflow, but I think it's quite interesting to just go over it again. One question I want to ask everyone is, how much should or can we even adapt our workflow for different types of projects? I almost think it's almost, if you've got a tried and tested workflow, you should probably stick to it. I mean, at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is create a journey for our audience, tell a story. So why should we approach it any differently, whether it's a pop show or it's a theatrical production, and maybe those 2 different applications can help inform the other. I also think maybe trying, I don't know how easy this would be because I haven't done it yet, but trying to encourage production teams maybe to employ some of the better processes within theatre in more commercial projects like music tours. Obviously, loads of factors stand in the way. There's budget, there's timeline, you don't know the people as well and all this, but I think if we all keep a good grounding on how we want the process to go, maybe we can influence it a bit. So I think you all know this, but the first point of call is research. Read the book, listen to the music, watch the movie. Contextual information around the piece, the time, the place, the social climate may hugely inform your design to further enhance the setting and context of the show. Understanding the material as well, it gives you a huge amount of confidence. Like, if you really trust in what you've learned, then you can feel really confident in what you say and what you want to represent for the story. think for a music artist, for example, like a pop star, having a tour, I'm not sure that it's much different, actually, the research phase, because you read the lyrics, you watch their music videos to see what they originally represented, whether you want to recreate that or not. You know, it all feels relatively similar. We recently did a project where the artist kept mentioning that they didn't feel that their content was bespoke, which is such an interesting word because bespoke means so many things to so many people. But, and of course, all of our content was designed for the stage, and it was, you know, it wasn't a loop. Nothing about it was not bespoke in our eyes, but what they meant was it didn't feel bespoke to their feeling, their personification of that song. And, you know, a big thing about the research phase that maybe falls into a different phase is how do we know the personification of the song? We could do as much research as we like, but we didn't write the song, you did. How do we communicate with our client or the artist in a music tour, for example? How do we encourage that? It's super difficult. It's a question I ask to everyone because a lot of celebrities really don't want to respond that way. They want to sit with their pool of talented people, and that's great. But I think the exciting work in a music tour or a television series or anything like that that's a bit more commercial, the more you collaborate with that person, the better and better it gets, because then you start to learn what they want and what they need, and they start to trust you a little bit more, and you get more out of it. I don't know how to make this better. I'm just putting it out there as an observation. So then there's the second stage of workflow, which is creative and technical development. This is the stage of the production, in our experience, changes most dramatically in theatre, opera, installations, to rock and pop shows and award ceremonies. Because we believe as a studio that our job as video designers is to hold the creative and the technical intention. It's impossible to make good work without an understanding of both of them, but you don't want one to override the other. No matter what the scale is, if you feel the tech, you're pulled away from the story of the show and you've kind of failed. I know it's interesting because in a lot of music tours, television shows, anything, bigger productions, more often than not, in my experience, video designers haven't actually been asked about the materials. The set's already built, the equipment's already done, you're being brought on to do the content, which is an interesting way of doing it, but it's not the same in every form of the industry. This show that's pictured here is Bottega Veneta, which I showed earlier. We were invited into the creative development conversation really early on. The agency that was producing the show for Daniel Lee had an idea they wanted to execute, but they collaborated with us to execute it. And because we had the technical know-how to be able to do that, we really enjoyed exploring it with them. It doesn't nearly as much happen in a lot of other contexts because of lots of different factors, but I think being able to do this yourself gives you a huge amount of confidence when you walk into a room and an understanding of the materials that you're using very well. Speaking of materials, it includes in-depth material studies where, in this specific instance for Bottega Veneta, the client really wanted to seem or was environmentally conscious and really wanted to use biodegradable and recyclable materials. Now, that's not something we've normally done, but it was really enjoyable learning what we could do with those parameters and how it would affect our brightness, our transparency. We want the viewers to be able to see through one layer to the other. If we use this material, it will get less brightness, but it will look really good and people will be able to see through it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is just the process. We pre-visualize everything, obviously, throughout the process of technical development, but both ways, because, you know, lots of clients will find it really hard to understand, for example, oh, is that the content? I don't understand. Is that the lines and the grids? Is that what we're making? No, we're not. We're making this, but this is where the projections hit, and this is where the shadows are, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, and I think when you're a part of a process like this project for Bottega Veneta, everyone, because you've had this long process of going back and forth through previs and talking about materials and then seeing content, it's a huge advantage of the creative development of the actual content as much as it is the actual installation, because you're learning, as the content creator, you know so much about the materials that you're using. These are some projected studies for Curiouser and Curiouser, which was an exhibition about Alice in Wonderland. and through the looking glass. It was an exhibition at the V&A London. For this, it was similar to theatre. We wanted to do a big projection map table, obviously, because of, the Mad Tea Party. But every single decision was made as a collaborative process. We helped the exhibition designer with the heights of the props, how full to make the table due to shadows that occlude, other objects, to ensure that everything was clear and that the type of content we wanted to make would read well. So even, the size of the pixels, how far away the projectors are, and all the rest of it would have affected if we wanted to ask a question to the audience, if we wanted to put text on there, et cetera, et cetera. And it included, what colour do we paint it? If you want to get a huge range of colour, then you can't have a white surface or a black surface, as we all know, but we were advised and asked, and that meant that the project was better for it. Obviously, this stage, this whole research and development stage, has a huge amount of revisions, problem solving, and creative compromise. This may be due to budget restraints, material availability, but also artist tastes. People change their minds, and iteration is key, and it's not the final stage. Then we get into content reduction. Right, we're finally there. We've revised 1,000 times. Everyone's seen style frames up the wazoo, and everyone likes the idea and everyone's happy, but now we actually need to get into making it. It's been all that time since. Obviously, as we all know, this process, again, changes very dramatically and kind of blends into on-site, whether or not you're doing a theatre project or you're doing I keep saying it's a terrible word, commercial project. What I say when I say commercial, what I really mean is a project with money, I think is what I really mean. And I think the main factors that change, as we probably all know, is that it can either be like months on site, and therefore the production process is shifted, so you don't pre-prod and you don't make all the content before you get there and then quickly slap it on the screen, go, 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 it's been 2 weeks. Instead, you have a hugely long rehearsal process where that on-site and content production phase starts to blend, because you wait till you can see the surface. You start, but you don't finish everything perfectly, you don't polish everything, because when you get there, you can learn a huge amount, you've got time to fix it. So I mentioned already, so the production, obviously, process hugely changes depending on the budget of the project. And the reason that we're a small studio and we like being a small studio is because when we have a project with no budget, we just do it in our studio in tiny little film setups, filming hands and rolling out clay with a bottle of wine, as pictured there. And this was actually for The Mask, which was Es Devlin's artwork at Somerset House. It was one of our own art pieces. It was an ovoid sculpture of London from an aerial view. And I mean, what we explored here was human intervention, environmental impact, and we basically projected Es's hands, and she peeled away layers and layers to reveal the city underneath, which was lovely. Or it could be a much larger scale project where, apologies, my finger slipped. Or it could be a much larger scale project where we'll do big shoots. We'll travel to New York to do them, huge LED setups, green screen shoots, where we'll employ an entire film crew because we need to. We'll have 12 animators on board generating character animated content, everything, you can think of it. And the scale is that ranging, and we enjoy that because, even with the, I think they all inform the other. With this project for Doer, we did a hand shoot and we loved it and we learned loads of things. And now for your hand shoot where you're going to put hands in a big bowl of fruit, we've learned all that stuff and we feel really confident about making it, and we're going to enjoy it even more and make it even better, and we're developing as artists. The on-site, which, as I already mentioned, bleeds, because if you were in theatre, you might have been doing a lot of that production phase in the actual theatre, whereas on more of a more commercial project, you'll be, it does range within, but I think 2 weeks is probably quite normal for maybe a music tour. I think on-site is often the most fun, but it's also where, as we know, we might have to throw away a lot of ideas and start again. So the theatrical way of doing it, where you spend a lot of time there, is probably preferable to all running around with your heads cut off, trying to work out how to change the show and how to tell the story despite not having the month to prepare. And then obviously the environment itself can really change. This was a really fun production where they put us in a catering truck for rehearsals, which was really fun and showed us loads of respect for our craft. So to sum up, in installation work, the time is often much longer. There's testing. These are projection tests, programming tests, everything. You know, all this time whilst everyone's building things and you're working. And I think we should try. I don't know if everyone does work within theatre, opera, and as many of these different crafts, but I think we should try to, and also take some of those incredible aspects of creating theatre and move them into all the other aspects of our industry, because, you know, for people that don't work in theatre, they make schedules for every day. You sit and talk about questions and things that you love to make and, issues you're having, and then they go, okay, well, would you like some time on stage for half an hour to do that for the next day? And you go, yes, please. And I don't think that's ever happened in a music tour, or where you just get told to turn up and you have to make everything. And I don't know how we change this, but it's something that I think if you do both, you end up feeling more confident to ask for what you need in the other situations. We just did a project with another designer, a lighting designer, who also works in theatre, and there was two of us. You know, there was content and lighting, both had theatrical experience. And suddenly we were asking the artist and the production manager on a music tour, no, we don't want to do a run through tonight. We don't want to do it. We don't need the time. We need to focus this or do that. And when you had two people instead of one fighting for time and changing and asking for what you needed, the production process totally changed and became much more enjoyable. The other thing I will mention, I don't have a slide to represent it, is that our role as video content creators and the technical being quite separate, as we know. And I feel that more here in America, I think, than I do in the London and UK. And that's just my experience thus far, and I've only been here for a year, so I can't suggest that I'm completely right about that. But it's our relationship to tech, it's our relationship to programmers and video programmers. And I think it's super interesting because in theatre, you actually ask for a specific programmer to work on your show because they're a huge part of your collaborative process. They are controlling your video on a huge surface. And what I find really interesting is that my experience so far is that programmers seem to be treated like operators, very separate. They're with the video supplier, they've got their own agenda. I don't understand how that's happened because they should hopefully all like each other and you get on really well. And I think that role should be treated with huge amounts of respect and as a collaborator. And they should be shown the creative ahead of time and hopefully become more invested in the show that you're trying to make, because I'm not sure why I've noticed that the roles seem so disparate and they're not as collaborative as they are in theatre and opera, and I think it's really important that we make them more collaborative. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Check, check. Hello?
Check.
Anyone have any questions for Charlie? Sam, down in front.
Thank you. Wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I guess my question would be, given how you kind of spread across all of these different worlds, if you could, like Eye in the Sky, pick two disparate roles and force them to trade positions for a month to make everyone's lives better, who would you life swap?
Disparate roles within the production?
Within any point of production. Like I would, as a director, I would love to make every director edit something once. So what would you do to make everybody get on better and help with the project?
I mean, unless recent experience prevents me from saying lighting and video to switch, but I usually would quite have enjoyed that with specific lighting designers. That's a really cool question, and I'll be giving it more thought. I have no idea. It's a great question. I'll have to find you and come up with my answer. So sorry.
Another question?
Thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
So you said you've been here for about a year. I think this might tie into your comment about programmers. What's your response to working with unions?
Unix.
U.S. versus in the UK. Yeah.
Unix.
Unions.
Unions. I heard you now. I'm so sorry. I was like,
That's us here.
Yeah. Yes, it's actually a very interesting process. I did a show at the LA Opera House, which was unionized, and my wrist got slapped a lot, which was enjoyable and very strange. In the UK, obviously, because we all mud in and we actually program a lot of the shows ourselves, it was incredibly interesting experience, and I found it very slow. It was enjoyable because we got to collaborate with lots of different people, and you were kind of forced not to get, because I'm very hands-on, I'll direct a shoot on stage, and then but I wasn't allowed to do that. I wasn't allowed to hold a light. Someone else had to hold that light, and I was like, that's totally fine. If he's good at holding that light, I'm up for it. But I did find it was just so different from what I'd ever known before. But that's actually the only show I've worked with in the union here so far. That was Lucia di Lammermoor at the Opera House. But yeah, it's a good point.
Any other ones? We have an online question. So exciting.
Ooh.
The internet. We got a question from Chase. How do you manage client expectations of the complexity of creating content, especially in today's AI generative instant content creation expectation?
That's a great question. You can't. Everyone wants everything immediately and for it to change. I think my personal, and as us as a studio, we try to be so incredibly honest from the get-go and let our emotions, I mean, I think it's fair to say, are you absolutely joking? That can't happen for tomorrow. You're mad. I think, why not? We're all human beings we're not AI, we're not bots that cannot sleep throughout the night. And I think being realistic and honest about what people are asking for is the only thing that you really can do. Obviously, the other thing is great organization and making dates and creatives incredibly clear to the client from early on as humanly possible. But from anyone that's worked on a music tour will know that nothing of that gets listened to. Once you're on site, it all changes.
We had one in back, maybe.
Hi, Charlie. It's
Hi.
Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. I'm going to re-ask the question that was first asked, but
No.
in a different way. In a
Okay.
different way. I'm going to say, how help people who aren't video content creators, that's my world where I come from and some others in here, help lighting departments or other departments understand sort of what gives you joy in your process, but also what is some of the hardest things that you have to deal with, right? So what makes you really happy about what you do that may be different than a lighting designer, and what is like the hardest thing that you have to do almost every time when you're in a production?
Okay, the hardest thing I have to do every time I'm on production is throw away beautiful work. And we try as a studio not to hold on to it too much, because it's an iterative process and things get thrown in the bin, and that's fine. But it's actually more that all these incredible collaborators that I work with have worked so hard on something and we've polished it together and then it didn't work and it gets thrown away. That's probably the hardest bit for me, even though it should be second nature at this point. And then the other question was, what about my role specifically versus a lighting designer or a set designer makes me really happy? I mean, I think we're far superior to lighting there because of the pixels, and I think it's, that's not true, I was just joking. I think what I love about what we do, we can tell stories both literally and abstractly, with much like lighting though, sadly, with light and color and pace, but also showing human emotion, whether it's animation or it's the range of tools to tell a story. We have so many options, and I think that's incredibly exciting and loads of fun.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey.
Thanks for everything. That was great. You talk a lot. You've been doing this for a while now, and you talk a lot about how new technologies have helped and changed, the process of everything. AI made me think about other challenges and dramatic shifts in our industry in recent years. Have new technologies throughout your career always helped? Have you found that certain things actually make it harder for us as designers? And how do you deal with those changes and managing the client when they want them?
Got I think that's a really cool question. I think AI is possibly the most relevant technology adjustment that we've recently experienced, because our studio, I mean, we use AI internally, but we never show an AI image to a client. I know lots of studios are really pioneering AI, and it's all to them. But I think iteration in our line of work is so important for you as much as for the client. And if you take the AI and all the other technologies are speeding things up so much, you don't get a time to iterate and change as much. And I worry that if everyone becomes too reliant on it, people will think less and do less, and maybe that human experience should be made by humans, and AI as a tool to help create that human experience. There was lots of layers to your question. I've definitely forgotten about 4 of them, but I think most technologies have helped us. Some maybe we're on the cusp of it being a bit hindered. Some of the new technological advances, potentially.
Or more, I think.
Hello.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to see you.
Nice.
Excellent work.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I guess I just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about, are there any insights, because you guys have worked with very creative, like artists, or on the theater side or in the installation side, sort of like your client is a creative person versus, and that's also true in like the music industry side too. But I think some of us have had the experience that they're like wildly different kinds of creative. And if you have any insights or like things that you've learned from doing the different sort of industries and like what you apply or what you have learned and applied to either one.
Yeah, I think you're very right. I think there's a huge breadth of stuff. I think the communication thing is super interesting because, as you say, working with Ez Devlin, for example, Ez makes shows. She makes shows all the time. That's what she does for a living. And so creating her art with her is a dream because she understands the craft of everything that we're doing, and she wants to make the best possible thing, and she knows we're all human beings and we're all here because she's the other person sat next to you in a rehearsal. So it's a wonderful experience, and the only thing that I can think that we can try and take from it, which I tried to mention earlier, is this communication thing, because I think with a music artist, our recent project, we had a big issue with communication. It was really, we were set along a path that was not right, and we felt a little bit like it was completely out of our control. And I think what's really tricky is it's an ongoing relationship, I think, that will solve that. So I think we all have to be in the shit just once, and then maybe it'll get better and better as time goes on, especially for music artists, I think, specifically. Maybe. Just experience, I guess. Trial and error.
Well, amazing. We are going to move on to lunch. So thanks so much to Charlie for doing another round of applause.
Thank you.